Hello and welcome to a new episode of Search Off the Record, a podcast coming to you from the Google Search team, where we talk all about search and maybe have some fun along the way. This totally didn't sound like John Mueller. My name is Gary, and I'm a Gary at the Google Search team. And today we have Martin as a guest. Well, actually, you're also a host sometimes. Everyone say hi.
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 What is going
That was
on
great.
with you today? That was amazing.
I Martin,
Yeah.
how are you?
Okay. I think. Yeah.
Okay. Just okay.
Self-tests.
Isn't
say
that
okay.
unusual for you?
Maybe.
Like-
I don't know. I'm usually
Like I
sunshine
have
and
this-
happiness.
Yeah, exactly. I have this perception about you that you're always the adjunct chief of sunshine and happiness. Because I'm the chief of sunshine and happiness.
That's true.
At
Yes.
Google.
Okay. Wow.
So you cannot be that too.
I got a promo though. That's pretty nice. Okay.
Let me tell you what I was thinking. Because for a change, I was thinking.
All right.
So I thought we'd do a more human episode
You.
with you. Exactly. Yeah.
No
where
touching.
we talk about our human side, because I read that some people are convinced that we are not quite humans. So this will be one of those episodes where we debunk some myths about us.
Okay.
Maybe we talk about some challenges that we might have. And I don't mean because I don't have challenges, because I'm the challenge.
Oh, the turntables. Okay.
But yeah, they turn. Shocking.
Shockingly, you turned the tables.
But Martin, why don't you say hi to this lovely audience? Actually, you already said that. My notes
already said
are
that.
horrible. Yeah.
Sweetie.
Okay,
are
so
you
what? So what do
okay?
you? No. Was I ever? But seriously, how about we do like a more human episode where we talk about like frustrations that we have and whatnot? Because I think like at least some of the things that we are doing are very different from any other experiences I had before joining Google in 1777, which was 15 years ago. And you probably had the same feeling that some things are different from the things that were at previous companies.
That's true.
So, what do you think?
Yeah, that sounds nice. Let's do that.
What do you think?
Let's pull back the curtain.
Okay, so you don't know the questions that I'm going to ask, which is,
I'm only slightly
Martin.
worried. Yeah.
You should be. A core part of our job is public speaking. And I know you as the JavaScript goat. Like,
Bah.
no, not that goat. The greatest of all time. But I also know that you also do public speaking for the team about technical topics.
Yes.
Did you have prior experience with that?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
What were you public speaking about?
Oh, a lot of different topics. Mostly like web development, but
like
cast that net widely.
right, so technical stuff.
Yeah, technical stuff.
Like JavaScript and all that kind of stuff.
JavaScript, CSS, backend stuff. Yeah.
And I imagine that was very different from the public speaking experience that you have when speaking for Google Search.
Yes. Yes, that was very different.
I touched a nerve.
Yes.
I see. The audience cannot see it, but I see Martin on my screen and he's blushing. So how is it different?
So beforehand, I had pretty much an audience that I shared my background with, which were developers. I still do talks to developers or at developer events, which I really like. But even if you go to a developer event and talk about SEO, it is a strained relationship you're entering. And I am particularly putting myself in between the two sides. So it feels like there's a bit of a divide between developers and SEOs. Surprise, surprise. And I am trying to... So when I used to speak, before I joined Google, when I used to speak to developers, I was one of them. And I was speaking about topics that they are thinking about as well. So it's like, oh, you have that problem as well. Interesting, because I did this and it kind of worked. I'm still struggling with these problems. Do you happen to know what to do here? So I was in their shoes. I was coming from their perspective, and I'm just like amongst people who kind of share the same view on topics generally, mostly. I mean, I had some situations regarding accessibility on the web where some people would disagree that I think the web should be accessible to as many people as possible, but okay. And now I'm kind of coming from an adversarial role, so to speak. It's like, he's a developer, he's one of us, and he speaks our language, and he does the things that we do, but he talks about this weird snake oily kind of thing, and he probably wants to sell us something. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to help you do your job better and understand where the people who come to your desk and ask you questions or want your help come from. And sometimes that is met with positive feelings and reactions, and sometimes that is met with negative ones. Yeah, that's different.
How did you get into public speaking, or why?
I think I got into public speaking through a meetup in Germany, where they had a format called Ignite, and Ignite there's a different word for it, but I can only remember the name. I think Ignite is a brand from O'Reilly, but there's another term for it. It's 5 minutes, 20 slides, they auto-advance, and you just talk through your slides. There's a different term for it as well, but I keep forgetting what it's called.
Isn't it a Japanese format?
I think so. 20 slides, 5 minutes or something like that. It has a name, but I cannot. Pichakucha.
Yeah.
I actually don't know where that comes from, but that.
Well, that sounds Japanese.
Okay. That was fun and a challenge. Because I kind of like talking to other people about the stuff that I worked on. And for my coworkers, eventually, like, you run out of topics because they know the things you do because they work with you. And my relatives and friends who are not in computer science and software engineering are quite bored. So I had to start public speaking, I guess.
Oh, that was your reason for starting?
No.
So
the reason was
I imagine that you also had something like, I want to help people or something, not just because like my family doesn't understand me, so I go and public speak.
My actual primary reason was that I saw a lot of people moving away from the web, and I really, really like the idea of the web because it's such a ubiquitous and low barrier medium. And with reasons like, oh, but I want to build games. And I'm like, but you can do that in the browser. Or, but I want to later on, like 10 years later, it's like, oh, but I want to build like something that works on mobile. And I'm like, but you can do that on the web. I want something that looks more like an app, but you can do that on the web. So I wanted to help people see and understand that the web has a lot of power that is not being used. And I want to help people not run into the same problems that I ran into. So
how is that different from what you're doing today? Because like conceptually it doesn't feel all that different.
Yes, that's actually why I was interested in the job and why I'm so happy that I became part of the team. As a developer, I see how often we build stuff that then no one finds, and if no one finds it, no one uses it, and then it kind of goes down the gutter, and that's unfortunate. And I also, to be fair, I met a fair bunch of people who might not have been from the SEO world, who might not have been the easiest to deal with from a developer's perspective. I also, to be fair and to be frank, met lots of developers who are not easy to deal with, neither from the developer's perspective nor from the SEO's perspective. So it's the onus is on both sides to be nice people. What's different though is that now I am kind of trying to bridge a gap, and I'm also trying to talk to two very different audiences, and that is tricky. And sometimes I have to talk, being the SEOs or digital marketing on one end,
right,
and developers on the other end. Sometimes these roles and audiences fall into the same person, but it's not common necessarily. Yeah. And what's even worse is when I'm kind of like speaking by proxy. So I tell SEOs what to tell developers if they want something. So
yeah. Do you think SEOs need to know some dev stuff? Because with I think when you start doing development, okay, I'm giving away my biases, but when you do some development, over the months, you start thinking in a different way about computer systems than before, because you start seeing that, well, it's doing this because it was coded such. But it also, when you start developing stuff, you will start understanding the limitations that computer systems might have. Not all of the limitations, but some of the limitations. So back to the question, do you think SEOs should know some dev stuff?
That's a tricky one. I think it's a similar debate to the should designers know coding? And for the designers versus coding thing, I don't have an answer, and neither do I really have a strong stance on this. But it depends a little bit on where you draw the line to know dev stuff. I think in order to optimize a system or work with a system so deeply like SEOs do, you have to understand some of the characteristics of the system. So I think if you've never seen how HTTP roughly, you don't have to code in C# or C++ or JavaScript or whatever to build like your own crawler or to build your own web server.
Why would you code in C#?
Some people do. I don't know why that came up. Probably because right now I have my glasses on, so I see sharp. I'm so sorry.
Okay, and that is how we wrap up this episode.
No, I killed him. Good. No, you don't have to code like your own low-level network thing. I don't think you need to do that. But you should understand what is a header, how does HTTPS conceptually work, what's the certificate, how does that influence how the connection works,
right?
How does H2 differ from HTTP2 differ from HTTP 1.1? These kind of things make sense to understand, and so does understanding HTML, and maybe even understand a little bit about JavaScript. Again, not necessarily like the in detail bits and pieces, but you should understand how it interacts with the page and how that could make your life easier or harder, right? So I think some knowledge is useful. I don't think, and that's the other tricky thing, SEO is such a broad field. There are people who are amazing at taking content international, for instance. I don't think they need to understand dev stuff because they specialize on a much higher layer, as in like the content and the structure and language and localization in different markets. They might not have to understand the technical bits and pieces. But someone who's like a general purpose SEO or someone who's even specializing on technical SEO, I think they should understand dev stuff. What do you think?
I don't know if internationalization was the right...
Okay, because there are technical... Fair enough, there are technical... Yeah.
True. Yeah, but I get what you mean. Like, for example, if you're like, even if you are, I don't know, like media SEO, like they would want to know, or they should know differences between the content formats and the content deliveries. Like, for example, if you are hosting video, then how are you hosting it? Like, are you streaming it in, or are you just putting a static file somewhere on a server and then just like referencing it in a video container? Like, from my perspective, and usually the SEOs that I talk to / work with will know at least the basics of the internet workings. And I don't know if my biases just keep me away from SEOs who lack that knowledge. But generally, the SEOs that I talk to, they are pretty good at this. But of course, the group that doesn't know much or at all about some of the basic stuff on the internet can cause or have the potential to cause some headaches, both for the sites. Like I see that daily in the crawl issue report form where they installed a random plugin, and this is a large agency. They installed some random calendar plugin for all their clients for whom it makes sense. And suddenly we discovered sometimes 100 million URLs, new URLs because of that calendar plugin. And basically the blame was on us, not on, well, you added 100 million new URLs to your site and we started crawling them. Like, what? Maybe not the best example either, but but they can cause headaches for the sites. Do you think they can cause headaches from our comms perspective?
Yes. And to be fair, I think...
And again, this is not all SEOs.
No. I think there's a mindset situation as well. Like I think the people who don't know and they are upfront about it, they don't cause as many headaches and they usually don't cause as many issues. It gets dangerous when you're in the Dunning-Kruger kind of trough where you think you know things and then you don't. And that happens to me every now and then. I love talking to everyone who wants to talk to me. I'm excited to hear their perspective, their experiences. But sometimes they come in basically, flexing their technical skills, and from the flexing you can tell like no, it's not there, and it's okay. But the problem is by pretending that they know, they kind of take away the opportunity for me to explain things to them. That is tricky to navigate, and sometimes you are in a situation where you're being asked a question that is very contextual, and you notice that the person asking is having the necessary contextual knowledge. And I'm not even saying like, SEOs, they don't know their stuff. No. What I'm saying is, and SEOs should know this, and they do know this, that one website and another website might be very different from what they need to be looked at, or what needs to be looked at, what needs to be done, and what the requirements are. Someone who is like serving a very specific niche with highly regulated content in a single country, in a single language, might have very different requirements than a multi-language, multinational brand that sells everything to everyone. And then you have someone who asks a very specific question in a very specific context, and I can tell this person knows their context very well, but there's like other people listening as well, and that's fine. And that's how it should be. You shouldn't ask us one-on-one, you should ask us in public forums. But then I answer this person, and we kind of have like established, okay, so this is your context, this is the situation you are in right now with this client or with your company. In this case, XYZ, do this, do that, and then look at this and see if it gets better. But if we say that out loud, then someone else might listen who are in a completely different context. They might do something completely different. Their client might have the opposite needs. And then they just go, so I'll do that. And that might actually be harmful. That's tricky.
Yeah. But I mean, that applies on pretty much any comms situation. Like, for example, if you are a war correspondent and then you do one-on-one with someone and then someone overhears and then they put that in different context and it's very different. Or there were big cases about how cropping images, for example, which is another mode of communication, changes the meaning of the image quite a bit. So
that's true.
Yeah.
True.
What you are saying is that it depends.
It depends. Comms is hard, yeah. And what I mean, especially like war correspondence might actually be an interesting example, because I think there the challenge is that you have different parties with very differing, confronting and conflicting agendas. And what I worry is in developer communities, generally you don't have that. Everyone just wants to build stuff better, faster, whatever. In the SEO community, I sometimes see that some people try to make it into a confrontational and conflicting kind of situation where they have an agenda they want to push, and then everyone else has a different agenda, or like some player A has and I'm not saying like we are exempt of that. We have an agenda. That is by definition the case, because we want to build the best search engine there is. If we always succeed, I don't know. I don't think so. We are striving to do our best. And by that, we want certain things for the web. We want it accessible. We want it fast. We want it joyful to use. And some people might disagree with some of our points or some of our goals. I think that's fine. But it often makes things tricky, because people might cherry pick and might pick one thing you said, take that out of context, and use it as an example why people should follow their agenda rather than ours. And I think, again, that's fair game. If I say it in public, you can definitely use it however you feel like. But sometimes I'm saddened or scared by how out of proportion that can get, and how quickly that can get out of proportion. And that's unfortunate.
How would you fix that?
Oh boy.
Because to me, it goes back to standard communication challenges.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like we are doing any different from other public speakers.
True.
Who also have an agenda. They might want to sell a book. They might want to lobby for something. Quite literally, everyone has an agenda, some sort of agenda.
True.
It feels like, to all the headaches. Well, I didn't want to say that. I kind of like you sometimes.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah. Not often, but sometimes.
I like you always.
Yeah. Oh. Anyway, like there's no real solution to the problem, right? Like we can ameliorate some of the issues, like for example, abandoning my pet peeve. It depends, and then instead of saying it depends, actually say out the whole thing. Or at least the major things that the thing depends on.
True.
But ultimately, there's no solution to the problems. Basically, it's just like it's part of your job description.
True. Yeah. I think it would be nice. This is wishful thinking, but it would be nice if people at least like try to not only look behind what we are saying, but what other people are saying as well. Like, why is this person saying this now at this point in time? Especially if it confirms your own bias. I'm the first one to admit that sometimes if something confirms whatever I was thinking in the first place, I'm like, haha, I knew it. But it makes sense to think about like, wait, does this apply to me? Does this make sense? And I give you an example out of the blue, out of the field, basically. I was at an underwater photography workshop where we were in a pool. It was extremely brightly lit. It was extremely clear water. The pool was made out of polished aluminum or steel or whatever it was, but it was very bright and very reflective. Yeah. And everyone was using their strobes. Everyone was lighting this pool up as if there's like a major thunderstorm going on. And I was looking around going like, what the hell? Why are they doing that? Because my pictures, I think, come out fine without even switching on the lights. Because the one thing we have plenty of right now is light. And I think like sometimes people just blindly follow any kind of guidance or any kind of like guru they heard. And that leads to these kind of things, right? I read books, I watched videos, and I saw things with regards to underwater photography. And yes, of course, there's not much light underwater generally. So you need to bring light. So you have strobes or video lights. But that doesn't mean that you should just blindly apply them to everything you do. And I think if we were to think about that, that would be nice.
Would that be the one thing that you'd change about how we come? Like how we communicate? Or
I mean, that's not.
Or what would be the thing that you think we can do to make our situation better?
That's a really
other than quit.
Yeah.
Other than quitting.
Damn it! You're taking me away from my options. No, I think we're trying to do that. I think we can do more of explaining the context or repeating the context in which an answer appears. And I try to do that. In the last in one of the last conferences I spoke at, Tech SEO Summit, where it's a very technical audience. And you know me as the JavaScript person, and a bunch of people know me as the JavaScript person. I just wanted to grab people's attention.
JavaScript goat.
Okay, JavaScript goat. You know me as the JavaScript goat. In a presentation about performance optimization, I said, don't use JavaScript on a slide.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, great. Fantastic. I had like a remark on that slide saying like there's context missing here. And then I gave all that context. And I think if you can avoid JavaScript for what you're doing, then absolutely, definitely avoid it. And people are like, Martin Splitt says that. And I'm like, but that's the reality. That's what you should do. The problem with me saying that is, and probably this podcast is going to come back and bite me. The problem with me saying that in general is that people will just take that one sentence and ignore everything else I said before or after and say like, Google says, don't use JavaScript. So what I did instead is I explained JavaScript is necessary for a bunch of stuff. JavaScript can be used in a simple website because that's the other thing. People are like, oh, but if I build a website, there's no place for JavaScript. I'm like, that's not true. If you want your website to work offline, you need JavaScript. So making these broad statements is tricky. And I'm trying to avoid making these broad statements unless I give a lot of context. I actually spoke, I think, like 5 minutes about the context for that statement. And it's much, much broader than what I would say here right now. But I try to give as much context as possible. And I hope people will take the context into account before just blindly blasting messages like that.
Yeah. You know that that particular example that you just brought up, that is the reason why we don't share our slides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, our slides without context, they are useless.
Yes, that is true.
Martin.
And unfortunate. Yeah.
Are you feeling better now?
I'm feeling so much better. Thank you so much for the therapy session, Gary. This is great.
Okay. You know that this felt like the coffees that we've been doing during COVID?
Yes. We should do them more often.
Like, what, COVID?
No, not COVID. The coffees. The conversations.
Oh.
Not even the coffees. I don't care particularly about coffee. Okay, fine. You don't have time for me anymore.
Well, I do, and you're wrong.
Okay. Fine.
Well.
Fine. It's okay.
Fine.
It's okay.
Okay. How do you feel about wrapping up this episode?
Okay, fine. It was nice. Okay. All things should come to an end.
Was it?
I think it was nice. I liked it.
I really like it when we don't have a structure for the episode and we are just like randomly talking about stuff. Well,
to our listeners, let us know in the comments if you prefer those episodes as well. That would be interesting to get.
Why do you ask them so many questions?
Because
like,
I
every
care.
Episode you are like, tell us what you...
I want to know. I don't know. Maybe they're like, oh God, no. Why is this happening again? And then we should do less of it. Well, on the other hand, it's our podcast. We can do whatever we want, right?
On our last day, for sure. Well, that was for this episode, dear listeners. So, Martin, People can find you on LinkedIn and on Blue
Sky.
Something. Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
Mastodon, I guess.
Yes. There's not that many Martin Splitts, I believe.
TikTok.
No, not really.
On TikTok too? No, you don't really. Do. Okay. No. Well, it was really nice chatting to you. And I say that from the bottom of my heart, which doesn't exist because I'm a machine. And listeners, thank you very much for listening. And goodbye.
Outrobot 3000 generic greetings.
We've been having fun with these podcast episodes. I hope you, the listener, have found them both entertaining and insightful too. Feel free to drop us a note on LinkedIn or chat with us at one of the next events that we go to if you have any thoughts. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.